Today on the John Ankerberg Show, does advancing science refute or prove the Genesis 1 creation account? My guest is astronomer and astrophysicist Dr. Hugh Ross, who received his PhD in astronomy from the University of Toronto and did postdoctoral research at Caltech on quasars and galaxies. When talking about the credibility of Genesis 1, I will ask him, do the more than 30 modern space-time theorems sustain the biblical doctrine that there was a beginning of all matter, energy, space, and time, and thus there was a transcendent causal agent beyond matter, energy, space, and time, namely God, that brought everything into existence? To hear a professional astronomer answer these questions, we invite you to join us. Welcome, I'm John Ankerberg, and I'm glad that you joined us today. We're going to be talking about the Holy Bible. This is mine, and it's the best-selling book worldwide and makes a compelling claim for itself by saying all Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. Yet the Bible is ignored by many who say everyone knows that the first two chapters of Genesis are full of scientific nonsense. Have you ever said that? Have you ever heard that? Yet more people all over the world can quote Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. More people can quote that verse than John 3:16. And yet it's the most ridiculed verse in the whole world. Should it be? Today we're going to talk about that. My guest, as you've heard already, is astronomer and astrophysicist Hugh Ross. And Hugh, let's start with what do the words in Genesis 1:1 refer to when it's talking about God created the heavens and the earth? They don't even understand what those phrases mean, and the fact it's used, 13 times in different places in the Bible, and it always means the same thing.
Right. Well, I've debated several atheists on university campuses, and they just jump on Genesis 1:1, saying the Bible gets it wrong from the very first verse, because science tells us the universe showed up long before the earth does, and yet the Bible says they're both there in the beginning. And I was raised in Canada. I had to be fluent in French to get my PhD, and French has a small vocabulary language, just like Biblical Hebrew does, and therefore it's very idiomatic. I became fluent by memorizing over 1,000 idioms. And when I read Genesis 1:1, I said, oh, the heavens and the earth must be an idiom. In other words, the heavens and the earth refers to the entirety of the universe. And I read through the entire Old Testament. Not once do I see the word universe. And I figured out why. In Biblical Hebrew, they don't have a word for the universe, but they have this idiomatic expression, the heavens and the earth. And as you said, it shows up 13 times in the Old Testament. If you look at all 13 passages, it's clear it's an idiom that refers to the entirety of creation, all matter, energy, space, and time. Something you see in the New Testament Greek. Hebrews 11:3, the universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect. We can detect matter, energy, space, and time. And so you can't base your belief on just one verse that you don't understand entirely.
You're an astronomer and astrophysicist, and I want to know, scientifically, is there evidence for what God is saying in the very first verse?
Well, I was not raised in a Christian home, but when I picked up the Bible and saw in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, I was reading that at the same time that physicists in South Africa and Britain were beginning to develop the first of the space-time theorems. And those theorems basically make the point that any universe that expands on average throughout its history has a space-time beginning, which implies there must be an agent outside of space and time that creates our universe of matter, energy, space, and time. And the power of these space-time theorems, they're based on just two fundamental assumptions. Assumption one, the universe contains mass. And you and I are living proof that the universe contains mass.
You just step on a scale and you can tell you got mass.
You got mass, right. The second assumption is that the equations of general relativity reliably describe the movements of massive bodies in the universe. Now, when I was first reading the Bible in my teenage years, we could only prove that to 1% precision. Today, we can prove it to 16 places the decimal. So there really is no basis for doubting that indeed there's a space-time beginning. And that's something I noted. When I looked at the other holy books of religions of the world, they describe how God or gods create within space and time. The Bible stands alone in saying that God creates independent, outside of space and time. According to the Bible, space and time don't exist until God creates the universe. So in that sense, the Bible gets it right from the very first verse.
Yeah, on that space-time theory, I think you were quoting Alexander Vilenkin, and that's one of the most well-known of the space-time theories, which I think there are now, 30 of them?
There's over 30 of these space-time theorems, and not all of them show that there must be a space-time beginning, but the one that Alexander Vilenkin was involved in, what they discovered is, okay, any universe that expands through its history must have a space-time beginning, and they recognize only an expanding universe is it possible of physical life. So the fact that there's life in the universe proves there's a space-time beginning. And a year after he and his colleagues, Arvind Borde and Alan Guth, published this most famous of the space-time theorems, he wrote a book, and this is what he said as an agnostic physicist in the book. He said, quote, "With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning." Now, he never really talked about the problem, but the problem is this. Proof of a space-time beginning implies there must be an agent outside of space and time who creates our universe of space, time, matter, and energy.
Right.
And this has really changed the debate that I've been having with atheist scientists, where they still claim to be atheists, but they all concede some form of deism, that there has to be some kind of cause outside of space and time that creates our universe. Even Lawrence Krauss, in his book, A Universe from Nothing, states we cannot take deism off the scientific table, the force of the space-time theorems. So the debate has really shifted. There is a God beyond space and time. The real debate now is that God a personal being that designs the universe?
Yeah, the whole title of this series, Does Advancing Science Refute or Prove Genesis? So most of our society, our popular culture, they criticize the first two chapters of Genesis. And in fact, even some of our evangelical scholars are starting to criticize it.
Right.
And so we're talking to them, but we're also talking, we just picked up the 1040 window, which is like 67% of the world's population for television. We also picked up the entire Spanish world, everybody that's watching Spanish television from South America all the way up through the islands, through Mexico, through the United States, which has 62 million people here in the United States. And, you know, we've got Israel, we've got it in Hebrew, and we've got it in Russian, and we've got it in Ukraine. We've got it in countries all around the world, and it's growing. And so you're really talking to people in these spots, and I'm interested very much in all of the Hispanic folks that are listening, because this is one of their main questions. It's one of the main questions that Generation Z has right here in our own country, and I'm interested in very much in getting the information that's in your head into their head. So we're taking Genesis 1, we're going right straight down the passage, and I'm amazed at how many churches have never done this.
Well, they've never done it, John, because they're afraid of stirring up controversy. And I've traveled around the world. This is a problem no matter what nation or language you're dealing with.
The John Ankerberg Show is a global outreach that broadcasts to 4.5 billion potential viewers in more than 200 countries and territories. Our partnership with Faith Comes by Hearing shares the hope of God with people around the world using audio Bibles given by loyal viewers like you. Your support also provides thousands of free resources on our website, including a first-rate discipleship course in 13 languages and articles from top scholars. Together, we can encourage believers and help people embrace Christ as their Savior.
What's interesting about my story is that it was Genesis 1 and 2 that brought me to faith in Jesus Christ, because I saw that the science was accurate, and I saw that Genesis 1 and 2 actually predicted future scientific discoveries.
You know, you were a special person that when you were 7, you were going to the library and you were taking home 5, 6, 7 books on astrophysics and astronomy. And you read them all. And you go back the next week, you get some more, and you cleaned off the whole shelf at the library and had to go and get a permission to go to the university to use their books. And you read all of their books.
Well, not all, but not quite a number.
Well, you were unusual. And last night when we were out to dinner, you were telling me that you can remember when you were 6, 7 years of age, the books that you read, and you can remember the things on the page and the paragraph that you read it.
Right.
Even now, a few years later, okay?
Other things I forget, but those things I don't forget.
It's unbelievable. And so people don't realize that there's a shift going on among our astronomers and astrophysicists. Tell me just a little bit and a few of the names of the astrophysicists that have changed their mind. When I went to the university, I heard the steady state theory up and down. I went to the University of Illinois, Chicago Circle campus, and heard that coming out of my ears all the time. Okay, and that's been proven wrong. The guy that actually invented it, what's his name?
Well, it was Fred Hoyle and Thomas Gold. They were the ones that proposed the steady state theory.
And they actually did scientific research on their own theory and found out it was wrong.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and other people that have proposed theories, the same thing has happened. And what are some of the conclusions that they have given?
What was happening in the early part of the 20th century is that observations were demonstrating that the universe had a hot Big Bang beginning. And immediately astronomers realized, hey, this really sounds very similar to what the Bible teaches. We can't have that. So they began to invent other models for the universe. You mentioned the steady state theory. There was the oscillating universe theory, the hesitating universe theory. But as we got more and more observations, these alternate theories were being proven incorrect, and reluctantly, astronomers had to accept the Big Bang creation model.
Yeah, and design of the universe is one of the main ones that really bugs them and keeps on pulling them over to the fact that God created. We're going to talk about design more, but let's go back for a moment to Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein came up with relativity, but as he was searching the universe when he first began and trying to come up with some of his theorems, in his mathematics, he came to the fact that the Earth must have had a beginning, and if you go back in time, he realized there was a start. And he didn't like that, and he fudged his own figures. Okay.
Well, he did that because the predominant view at that time was that the universe was eternally existing. So he said, how can I change my equations to fit this model? And so he put a fudge factor in his general relativity equations to do that. But when the observational evidence became overwhelming that the universe was expanding from the beginning, he said, hey, this was a mistake on my part.
Yeah, he said the universe is going away from us. If you reel the road back, the fact is it all came back to a point. Talk about that point of where the scientists believe the universe came into existence.
Well, I refer to it as an infinitesimally small volume, because a point is usually described as having only one dimension. Universe, in fact, started off with 9 dimensions of space, 1 dimension at time, expanded from that point, and about 10 millionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second, 6 of the 9 dimensions stopped expanding. 3 continue to expand to this day. That's when gravity separated out from the other 3 forces of physics. So the universe started off with just 1 force of physics. But as it expanded, it got cooler and cooler. And that caused that one force to become two, then three, and today we have the four forces of physics. And the universe begins with only space-time curvature, extreme curvature. But as that curvature is released, it produces photons at about a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second. And a little less than a billionth of a second, we get particles, massive particles forming in the universe.
Yeah, we did a program together, and I may put it up on our internet, where we went through all of the scientists that had interpretations or their way of thinking the universe came into being. And I think we went through 20 of them. We put their picture up, and you knew a lot of them.
Right.
And you not only told me what the theory was, but you told me how they did the scientific work to find out their own theory was wrong. And many of them became deists or theists. Now, you made a statement to me, and we'll say this throughout the program. A lot of people that call themselves atheists are not really atheists. What would you call them?
I would call them deists in the sense that they do concede there must be an agent beyond space and time that brought the universe into existence. But they really don't like the idea that that causal agent is a personal being that's watching how they live their lives.
Yeah, as we get into the program, we're going to find out, I think one of the major reasons is the intricate design of everything that we see in the universe. When I say everything, kind of give me an example of what everything means.
I don't know of an astronomer that doesn't recognize that the universe as a whole is designed to make life possible, and exquisitely designed. When you actually go down from the universe to each size scale, you discover no matter what size scale you look at, whether you're looking at the cosmic web, whether you're looking at super galaxy clusters, looking at the galaxy. I mean, 200 different features of our galaxy must be fine-tuned to make advanced life possible in our Milky Way galaxy. Then you go to the star, the planetary system, or the planet Earth, the moon, the asteroid and comet belts. No matter what size scale you look at, all the way down to the fundamental particles, we see overwhelming evidence that has been designed, fine-tuned, to make possible the existence of life, and not just bacterial life, but especially the equivalent of human life. And what's brand new, as astrophysicists are discovering, it's fine-tuned to make possible the redemption of billions of humans from their sin and evil.
Yeah, that's very, very important. Let me ask you just a couple questions right off the topic here, okay? And that is, how many stars are in the observable universe?
Well, there's about 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe.
Okay, that's galaxies.
And each one has a little more than 100 billion stars. So we're looking at roughly a trillion stars in the observable universe, and a few times more planets than stars.
Yeah, when Einstein said, if you roll the film back, okay, the fact is it came to a point, and they keep talking about this point. I wanted to know how small the point was, because they said all space and time and matter came to this point. And I thought, well, how big is the point? And I thought, well, it must be a particle. You know, you see a particle, I thought that was small. Google says, no, it's a lot smaller than a particle. It's a subatomic particle. And all of the universe that you just described, all of these planets, all of these stars collapsed into this one little spot.
I'll tell you how small it is. When gravity separated out from the other forces of physics, the universe as a whole was 1/10 billionth of a trillionth the diameter of an electron.
I always say, you got the point. If I had a piece of paper, okay, and I held it up like this, and I put the dot, and that's that dot of what you just explained, that's small. Then I'd like to put an arrow over here that says, what is the starting of that point on this little particle, okay? Scientists don't answer that question. Bible says God, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There has to be a starting point, and since they've come up with that theory, nobody knows what the starting point is.
Well, they do know that from the very beginning of the universe was designed so it would continue to expand from that point forward.
Yeah, let's say that you somehow had an explosion out of that little
Tiny
point,
volume,
okay?
yeah.
And this universe that we're looking at here, okay? And our Earth is just a little piece. We're going to show them a little bit of where we're at. You can hardly find us in the universe. It's so massive, okay? But all of that was crushed into this little point, okay? And then when it came out, it was absolutely fine-tuned. Now, people don't understand what fine-tuned means. In your body, you've got DNA and RNA cells that they haven't figured out how in the world those could be, by natural means, how they could come into existence. They are so complicated that there is nanotechnology in every cell in your body that is absolutely extreme, and they have no answer for that. That's just one example. The stars, how they're spaced out, and the fact that we need every one of those stars for humans to exist on Earth.
Yeah, the total mass of the universe has to be fine-tuned to at least one part in 10 to the 50th in order to explain how you have life in the universe today.
We're going to go right straight through the days that are given in Genesis chapter 1. Then we're going to look at Adam and Eve, okay? So we're not cutting any corners here. I want you to stay tuned for this stuff. But we're at the end of this program, and with just what we have said today about Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the whole universe. Give a final statement for that that'll take us into next week.
Well, what we're going to do in the next week is basically say where people stumble on Genesis 1, they get the wrong point of view, they get the wrong frame of reference. And you see Genesis 1:1, a frame of reference to the whole universe. Genesis 1:2 changes the frame of reference. If you don't catch that, you will conclude Genesis is teaching scientific nonsense. And as Galileo said, the biggest mistake you can make in Bible interpretation is to get the wrong point of view.
All right. Folks, hope that you've enjoyed and you've understood a little bit of what we're talking about. And I hope this has stimulated your mind to want to know what happened, what did God do in the 6 creation days and then the 7th creation day where he rested. What does all that mean, and what does it mean scientifically? We're going to talk about it theologically, but we're also going to talk about what's the science that backs it up. Do you know? If you don't, then you've got to join us for the next program, because Hugh, astronomer, astrophysicist, is going to tell us. And that's what we're doing these programs for. So thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned, because I've got a personal word for you in just a minute.
Stay tuned. John will be right back.